Hello and welcome, Ryan here from Fiscal, and today I'm going to take you through a deep dive of our reference books. So starting at the top, we're looking at your company and the company addresses. We can open this one in another tab. So we're looking at our company addresses. This is a relatively low impact area. However, the downstream effects are things like tax or shipping origins. Oftentimes, our shipping integrations will use our shipping location as the ship from location to calculate its rates. So setting up these locations can be quite important. And then going on to our, further on our company addresses is it will populate your templates, your documents and templates for emails and invoices and so on. It'll populate that from this data. So if I reference my shipping location, it will pull that data from this section of the reference books. Then we're going on to company contacts. This will be used for your sales reps, for example, when they are making sales. So generally a low impact item. However, if you're obviously reporting on your sales reps, then this is quite important for you to keep up to date. Going on to the Cin7 Core network, Cin7 to Cin7 network. What this does is actually pretty cool. If I have a supplier or a customer that is also using Cin7 Core, I can create a sales order in my account for one of my customers, and it will push a purchase order into their account. If I select the email function, there's a little bit of setup to this, but yes, if we have either a supplier or a customer using Cin7 Core, we can set up a network that automatically populates a purchase order or a sales order in their account. So quite a nifty tool. Then going on to our financial section, obviously the chart of accounts is something that we can set up prior to connecting to our accounting software. And this is a very high risk area. Now, once we integrate with an accounting software, either Xero or QBO, it will not allow us to make any changes to the chart of accounts in Cin7 Core, as the integration with Xero and QBO pushes our chart of account details and chart of accounts from the accounting software into Cin7 Core for us to use and populate with the financial information that is required for the accounting software. Bank accounts, this is a relatively low touch point. Again, this is something that your Xero or QBO will push or use in Cin7. So it gets Cin7 Core will get that data from Xero or QBO. Going on to account mapping. So this is essentially, if we have a look at our account mapping, this is where we tell Cin7 Core that the functional areas that occur or the functional tasks that occur in Cin7 need to be mapped to a specific account that then pushes into Xero. Now, this is things like your control accounts, your goods received not invoiced, goods invoiced not received, cost of goods, revenue accounts, work in progress. And these have a high impact to the accuracy that we're pushing data into our accounting software. So this is a vital component for us to get right. Of course, what we see in the title of the accounts to map to are going to match the accounts that we have in Xero and QBO or the accounting software. And as you can see here, we have a goods received not invoiced account going to a goods received not invoiced account. Cost of goods sold is going to cost of goods sold. So this is just where we will set that up and ensure that wherever we have a COGS account in Core, it gets pushed to the relevant COGS account in our Xero. So yes, getting that accurate is vital. Right, moving on to, so opening balances. is obviously just basically a one-time use item. So when we're starting out the implementation of Cin7 Core, this is where oftentimes we'll be telling Cin7 Core what are our open purchase orders, what are our open sales orders. We'll obviously import a stock in hand report, and then the opening balances that will need to match exactly with our accounting software at the time of integration. So this one is vital as well for a successful Cin7 Core implementation. And yes, again, this is obviously where we're going to import open SOs, POs, stock in hand, and account balances. Going on to tax rules. So tax rules, oftentimes we will have tax rules set up in Cin7 Core and tax rules set up in our accounting software. When we integrate those two, these need to be mapped as part of the wizard, but also they are name sensitive. So if I have auto lookup in Cin7 Core, I need to have auto lookup in the accounting software at the right rates. And so before we integrate, these need to be exactly the same in the terms of names and in the terms of the rates as well. Right, moving over to payment terms. Payment terms are quite important, especially when we're looking at cash flow forecasts. But this will determine if we have a sales order or a purchase order, what are the number of days that I am requiring either a payment or either to pay or to receive money from either my sales supplier or my customer. And this will then just obviously update to AR and AP and see if it goes into aged or if I need to follow up and so on. So quite important for us to set this up. Of course, this is also something that we need to set up for our suppliers and customers when we're either importing the suppliers or customers or setting them up for the first time. And then this will auto calculate the amount due or rather the due date for the amount due from those purchase orders or sales orders. Right, then we can look at our other items. So something very, very important is our additional attributes. So here, this is where we will set up our additional attributes for supplier data, for product data, customer data, sales data, and so on. So anytime that we have, if we have a look at our, for example, a supplier data, okay, let's have a look at this attribute set. We have the expected date of arrival, and the attribute set is set as a date. So whenever we have a purchase order, I think this one is being used for purchase order, then we'll add a field in our purchase order that we need to populate with a date for the expected date of arrival. Other items for products could be additional category isolation, potentially looking at target costs, and so on. So there is a lot of use case for additional attributes. However, you only get 10 additional attributes per set. And once it's set to products, you'll only be able to use those 10. Once it's set to customers, you'll only be able to use those 10. But very, very handy when we're looking at reporting and just trying to potentially like isolate or reference. We have also seen that in some clients, we've seen that the additional attributes is used as a reference to a previous name or a previous SKU that the warehouse staff is familiar with or that somebody processing is familiar with. We've also seen it populated with SKUs from outside of Cin7 Core. So really the use case for additional attributes is somewhat endless, and very, very important for us to make sure that we're using correctly. It just allows a little bit more flexibility in the way that we, the way that we're looking at our data, reporting from our data, and even using Cin7 Core when we're searching for products and so on. Right, moving on to stock. So this is where we're going to handle our categories. So this is your high level grouping. We're going to set certain categories like inventory, raw material, potentially finished goods. There's it really depends on your setup, but this is where we would set the highest level of separation between the types of products that we have. Then if we go into brands, this will then, for example, if I have a category called t-shirts, and then I have a brand for Nike or for Adidas, then those are sort of how we would use it. Then if we want to go even further, and we want to say red shirts, we could then go into an additional attribute and use it like that. When we look at locations, so the locations is very, very important. I'm going to go into locations and show you what goes on in there. So this is the locations that we have to our disposal within our entity. So if I have a main warehouse and I have 3 retail stores, for example, this is where I would load them. If I have a main warehouse and I'm using bins, this is where I would set it up. So inside your locations, I can set up bins where these would be the different pick locations, pick or pack locations for my inventory, and just to allow a little bit more organization within my warehouse. This is utilized mostly with the WMS app, with the WMS module of Cin7 Core. However, it's still very, very useful in general terms as well. If I've got a lot of SKUs and I'd like to organize my warehouse with a little bit more structure, this is where I would set this up. Additionally to bins, we can also set up pick zones. We can set up supply rules. There are, I'm not going to go through this right now. We have extra training material on supply rules and pick zones and transfer planning and so on. But this is essentially where we would manage our location-specific settings, such as directed pick, directed receive and put away, and the address thereof, and then also the type of the location. So we have warehouse, shop floor, potentially co-manufacturing or a fixed asset. So yeah, this is where we are managing our locations. Then when we look at order routing, then when we look at units of measure, this is going to be quite important for us to keep up to date with the units of measure that we hold for every type of inventory item in our system. So it's bottle, box, each, hour, and so on. If I am using additional units of measure, for example, this becomes quite important if I'm converting from pounds to kilograms, and so on. Moving on to product discounts, this is where we would set up any sort of discount. However, if we're integrated with an e-commerce platform, this is somewhat irrelevant. But if we are using a discounts workflow within Cin7 Core and we're operating our sales from within Cin7 Core, this is where we would manage it. So we can go in, add a new discount, and we can obviously give it a name. What type of discount is it? Is it simple, quantity-based, free shipping? So obviously, if it's free shipping and there's a shipping charge attached from our shipping integration, then it's going to apply a 0 value to it as a discount. Then we can say, how is it discounted? Is it discount amount? Is it so on simple? These are the options. Is it discount percentage, a markup amount, a percentage markup, or a price override? And then obviously the value of whichever option we have selected. from the discount type. Right. Moving on. Okay, then we have default fields. Now, default fields are important, especially if we're using Cin7 Core very much day to day inside Cin7 Core. We're setting up new products daily. We're setting up new customers daily. We're setting up new suppliers daily. Then these default fields can become quite useful. It will increase your efficiency, especially if you're creating multiple of the same products all within Cin7 Core, and we're not using an import-export function. Then we would set up the default type. So the default type would most likely be stock. The default category, if I'm mostly an apparel retailer, then it would be apparel. And brand, if I'm mostly working with something of a particular brand, then I would use that. Similarly, for costing method, if I'm always going to be using first in, first out, if I'm never concerned with having a serial number or a batch, or even having first expiry, first out, then I would just use the standard that I would have over there. So whenever I'm creating a new product, it defaults to setting up a first expired, first out with a serial number. Then if I'm mostly creating items, then I would select item or kilograms, or whatever the case may be, default locations and so on. So this can be quite useful when we're fairly active in creating new products, and we want to increase our efficiency thereof. Similarly for customers and suppliers. So when we look at our customers, whenever we create a new customer, what is the default currency? What is this default sales account? What is this default tax rule, payment terms, and so on? And the same for our suppliers. Right. Right, and then looking at RMA, this is where we would set up any sort of policies for the return merchandise authorization. So this is where we would create a new return policy, basically stating that these are the rules for when a product or when returns are allowed. And this oftentimes goes hand in hand with our B2B portal. So looking at these, you can set it up for particular products, particular tags, categories, brands, and so on. And then you can set up, obviously, all of the different set points for your RMA policies and so on. This is obviously quite an in-depth item to cover, but this is where we would set up those policies. Okay. Then you can set up the reasons for the return and so on, and then also looking at our CRM set points as well. So looking at our lead statuses, we would then just create a different lead status for the CRM to read and to highlight as a status for the relevant customer. Right, so this is basically everything to do with reference books.